Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Coach Sark, the Texas Longhorns, they still got a job to do in 2024. That is not going to prevent them from making sure they're in the exact same position come 2025. Two transfer portal additions coming in Saturday afternoon until I think what's so fun about this is these two guys, Brad Spence, Cole Brevard, like two of our favorite players that were in the transfer portal, especially a guy like Brad Spence, who I've been a massive fan of over the last 12 months. What stands out to me about Brad Spence, and I'll kind of give you the T-box in just a sec, is Brad Spence has played good football in the SEC. He's only going in the right direction. Like the version of Brad Spence we saw in 2023, then fast forward to 2024, and now going into only his third year of college football in 2025. Yeah, you're getting a damn solid player. I think you could get a very, very good off-ball backer going into 2025. Kind of Anthony Hill vibes, like a hyper-athletic linebacker that can come off the edge at times. They know what they want, and their linebackers. Brad Spence exactly fits that to a T. Going to get into Brad Spence, going to get into Cole Brevard, but there are also a couple other transfer portal targets we got to talk about as well. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast covering the transfer portal commitments over the last couple of days. The amount of support y'all continue to show means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, let's start with Brad Spence. Probably more of a my guy than your guy here, but I'll give you the T-box here. Sell the people. I'm Brad Spence.
Kind of like the prototype for what this Texas team likes to take. I mean, they really don't take a ton of transfers who haven't played really good college football. Yeah. And you look at Brad Spence, and especially in the context of that linebacker room for Texas, like obviously Hill and Leafau are going to be the guys kind of next year. It feels like both are playing really good football right now, but you're going to lose David Benda. And Ty Anthony Smith is kind of the guy coming through the pipeline, it feels like, but he's more of a developmental piece. So you go in next year with two guys who I think you really trust, some young guys you want to see develop into really good players, but you want to add the depth into that room with a guy who, again, like what you said, fits the system well. He's a really disruptive linebacker. I don't even think we've seen the best version of him because I don't feel like you've seen a ton of consistency for what Arkansas even wants to do with him. Like you said it. I mean, he plays on the end sometimes. He plays off ball. He plays in space. It's almost like a hybrid linebacker kind of corner position. Like I think Texas has done a really good job kind of identifying what they want out of their linebacker units and doing a really good job getting those guys super productive.
One of the things we talked about even going back to last year in terms of how Coach Sark decides to build this Texas roster, they've earned the right to be selective in the transfer portal because they're not some of these teams that just don't recruit the high score ranks well enough. So they got to build their roster through the portal. For Texas, they're doing it, in my opinion, exactly the right way. We are going to dominate the high score recruiting trail, in which Texas is the #1 class in the country right now. And then we're going to supplement our roster with just a few transfer portal additions. I go back to how we talked about Andrew Makuba. It's not like Texas went out and grabbed 20-plus transfer portal additions, but the transfer portal additions they did make were fundamentally changing this roster. Like Andrew Makuba, I don't think Texas has that kind of defense without the veteran presence of Andrew Makuba in the back end. Because you've earned the right to be kind of selective, it allows you to just get high-quality transfer portal additions. You don't have to take a bunch of risks. And Dill, to finish the conversation with Brad Spence, I mean, 54 tackles, 6 TFLs, 4.5 sacks. Like, he gets downhill as a backer and then only misses 6% of his tackles. That's the type of linebacker I want. Like, a guy that can go sideline to sideline, can attack the line of scrimmage, and when it's time to tackle, we ain't missing him. Find the ball, bring the ball, carry it to the ground. That's what Brad Spence does. And then, Dill, Cole Brevard, this is not going to be a flashy name. This dude's nasty. I mean, 6'3", 333 pounds. He is built like an absolute tank. Played a lot of football for Purdue last year. Depth on the defensive line is something Texas clearly is focusing on. They focused on it on the high school recruiting trail. They focused on it in the transfer portal last year, keeping those big bodies fresh. Having 5, 6, 7 defensive linemen that you trust to get the job done is very important. Cole Brevard, probably not going to be an All-American, but probably going to give you 20 to 25 really solid snaps a game. That type of stuff matters when you're competing for national championships.
And that's the one position I look like I wouldn't be surprised if they had 2 or 3 guys to this defense.
Oh, we got another one to talk about.
I look at the guys coming up from that freshman class. Like, that feels like the future, what they're going to be.
Yeah.
Myron Charles, obviously Justice Terry, and then Josiah Sharma. I'm sure at least two of those guys are going to play a lot of football. Justice Terry, a lot in the field quite a bit. And then I wouldn't be surprised if one of those, Myron Charles or Josiah Sharma, played a lot too. But that's probably the one position you look at. They're going to lose a lot of the transfers they took in last year at that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's probably the one, like, do you really trust Decideur Mitchell coming in? Obviously withdrew his name from the portal. I really think Alex January can be a really good player, true freshman.
Yes.
Now. He's kind of the guy I'm looking at as, like, really excited to see what he does as a sophomore. But aside from that, you don't have a ton of proven commodities in that room. Cole Brevard, kind of what you said, a really, really dependable guy. Not going to be the producer that probably a Justice Terry will be or a Myron Charles someday will be, but he's going to be a really good, solid guy who's going to give you a lot of good reps, and you don't really need to worry about it.
You're bringing in a guy for Cole Brevard to kind of bridge the gap for some of these true freshmen. You said Justice Terry, I'd be surprised if he doesn't significantly contribute as a freshman. Like, the kid, he just looks like he's been in a college football weight room for the last 5 years. Josiah Sharma is interesting because he's only 16 years old right now, so he's a young pup, but he's a big pup, and he's a guy that physically looks the part. You're right, and Dill, I think they're gonna look to supplement it even more. Lee Hunter, this kid could be a game wrecker. Now, Lee Hunter excites me. He's gonna be on campus, I believe, Monday. Dill, the highs, if you were to just say, hey, show me the best 20 reps from Lee Hunter on the year, it is straight up domination. The problem with Lee Hunter at times is he gets a little tired, I think. Or it's just like lack of effort. It's one of the two. Because, like, you watch me, like, holy smokes, we're dominating some reps and then we're just not having good reps. He plays a lot of football for UCF, right? He played over 500 snaps the last 2 years, been extremely productive, but has played a lot of football. Lee Hunter excites me at Texas because he probably doesn't have to play 550 snaps like he did at UCF. Probably cut those snaps in half and eliminate the bad reps and just get more good reps from Lee Hunter. If you do that, he's an animal against the run, but he's also a guy that at 6'5" and he's up to 325 pounds. Don't let that number on the screen fool you. It's a big dog. He is a very disruptive pass rusher as well. And although doesn't fill up the stat sheet, you talk about kind of like blowing up pockets. Lee Hunter does that in a big way.
And that's the one thing you're really interested on, because we've talked about it. Like, defensive linemen who have to play that number of snaps, typically won't rush the passer at a particularly high level, just by the nature of how much effort it takes to be a really good pass rusher. So, again, you look at teams that do a really good job rushing from the interior. Typically, they're teams that are really deep through that unit. Lee Hunter is certainly a guy you look at, and you said, like, can Texas get the most out of him by essentially cutting his workload probably down by like 30-40% or whatever it might be, and letting him go to work? Because I look like probably pairs well with a guy like Cole Brevard, who is not an elite pass rusher. I mean, solid enough, does his job, but much more of a threat in the run game in terms of what you want your defensive linemen to do in terms of eating up blocks. So you like what Lee Hunter can be, especially paired with a guy like Cole Brevard, because he is a much better pass rusher.
You think back at just like some of the Texas is probably a good example in 2023, like how loaded they were. And it wasn't the thing that frustrated me about how people talked about Texas is, yes, Alfred Collins. I mean, like Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, they were really, really good football players. But again, having all that depth, keeping all of those guys fresh in 2023, that's what made that unit special. Michigan, same thing in 2023. Think about Georgia, where it's like Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Carter, or Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, getting all my names mixed up. Having all of those guys on the same defensive line and keeping them fresh, like that's depth on the defensive line is one of the most underrated storylines for an elite defense. If you have depth and keep those big bodies fresh, it's really important. You can see Texas making that a priority. Dill, two offensive guys. Let's first talk about Max Clare, who would be a massive addition. We all know how important the tight end position has been at times for Texas. Max Clare, probably one of the, if not the best tight end in the portal, visiting Texas. You're a bigger Max Clare fan than me, so I'll let you kind of take the reins here.
And it's a position that's been so important to this Texas team for the past couple of years, obviously going from Sanders to Helm, who's had an incredible year. But again, one of those positions, you don't necessarily see that next guy right now who's particularly proven. Max Clare is a dominant player, I thought, at Purdue. Like, did a really good job for them in an offense where he was kind of the focal point, for lack of better terms, for most of his career. Still was able to run the routes I think Texas wants him to run, be able to get open on his own, like those type of things, and be a complete tight end. I think Max Clare is probably the most important addition that they could add to this offense. Because even like you look at some of the wideouts they're looking at, that wideout room is still going to be really good, even if they don't add any transfers. Like you look at the young kids coming up, the guys like Golden, Bolden, like they all can be back if they want. I'm sure they'll get one or two of them back. That's going to be a really good unit. That tight end position is probably the one you look at. You'd really like to see him make.
Well, it allows you to be like super creative with Michael Terry, who I think will end up playing tight end, although he could play probably 7 different positions on the football field. But you want Mike Terry to be that just offensive juggernaut weapon, and bringing in just a complete tight end that can do everything for you, whether it's split out wide, whether it's inline block. Then it allows you to be super creative with a guy like Michael Terry. Last one, we got to talk about Eric Singleton. They'll see the wide receiver room. This is not me getting up here and saying it's not good. Does it have that true wide receiver one this year? That would probably be my question. Okay, maybe it doesn't. And again, 4 wide receivers on Texas. I'm a Michigan fan. Like they all be wide receiver ones on Michigan. So it's not me getting up here saying Texas wide receiver room is bad, but when you're trying to compete at the highest level of the sport, you're looking for a wide receiver one. I don't think it's unfair to say I don't know who the wide receiver one is for this Texas team. In 2025, it could be Eric Singleton. They're going to get him on campus early next week. This, to me, would be a massive addition, especially as you go to Arch Manning, who is going to be a third-year player, but is still going to be a green player, an inexperienced quarterback. Give him a guy that can work vertically down the field, that can be a dog with the football in his hands after the catch. That true wide receiver one that Arch Manning can lean on, I think would be massive. Eric Singleton would be that kind of guy.
Yeah, I think it'd be a remain to be seen whether Ryan Wingo takes over that room and really becomes the guy.
Yeah.
Like he's done a lot of really good things. That's the only reason I look at, like, again, they're so deep at that wideout spot. They get one of those juniors back, 2 of those juniors back that are in the program right now. You got guys like Moore coming up. You got Nesbitt. You got Wingo. You got a bunch of other young kids. Like, it's a really deep room. Now, I don't think any program in the country turns down Eric Singleton because he's that good. So it's not like, again, that's just like the rich get richer kind of situation. And if you're Texas and he wants to be at Texas, you don't turn him down because he is an awesome player. So, like, again, do I think it's their most crucial ad? Probably not, but I don't know. No one's saying no.
See, I probably think it's a little, because I'm not saying they need to go out. Last year, they kind of had to replenish a little bit, and that's why you saw them go out and get a couple of them. You don't need to get a couple, but if you have the opportunity to bring in one true wide receiver one, I think you do it. The wide receiver position, everybody can eat. Like, just because you're bringing Eric Singleton doesn't mean Wingo's going to not get enough opportunities. Doesn't mean true freshmen like Khalil Lockett or Jamie French aren't going to get their opportunities. And so if you have the chance to – and what makes Eric Singleton special is he's a do-it-all guy. Like, there's just really not much he can't do. And so that's why I'd love to see him at Texas, a guy that you can get involved in so many different ways, which I'm sure Coach Sark's going to be like a kid in the candy store with. I think it'd make a lot of sense. Again, you're not seeing Texas take in 30 visitors at a time and going after 30 transfer portal targets. I bet they only take 20 guys on visits, probably take 10 to 12. That's all they need to take. Like, you look at that roster going into 2025, we don't got that many question marks about it. We'll shut it down there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.